So love when we're doing these events here. I got a lot that I wanted to go over this morning, and I'll get to the omnibus bill that is creating quite a bit of controversy in Washington, D.C. But let me first start with healthcare. We have made some strides with healthcare, but we still have a long way to go in the Valley. The Valley, our biggest issue has always been access. We've got to make sure that our patients, our people, have the ability to get to a doctor, to see a doctor, and actually have a doctor willing to take them as we move forward. And as we've seen a big expansion in our Medicaid population with more people having a new form of health care. We still see the long waits in each of our different emergency rooms, and our family's still having a hard time seeing the doctor that they want to see. So I was proud that we actually passed a bill that dealt with teaching hospitals. I expanded it with a bill that I had to make sure that our teaching hospitals in the Valley expanded their residency programs, and including our local health centers that will now have residencies as well. So to go right along with Assemblymember Gray on what he said, we need to make sure that as we're having these new medical facilities, the new medical hospital, UC Merced, that we actually have residencies. That's always been the big question. Why would we put a new medical school or medical college in an area that doesn't have residencies for our graduates to be able to go out and learn and serve in our community? Well, now we have it. We have the residency programs here, not only within the expansion of what we've seen with doctors in Modesto, but we've seen an expansion with all of our health centers. Our health centers continue to expand, but they need a residency program too. And coupled with that residency program, you will have UC Merced that will have new medical school and place for them to actually go and serve in our community, staying in our community, and actually having doctors that are willing to live here and serve our patients. But that's not enough. We also need to make sure that if we want our doctors to live here and stay here, that we actually pay them. You know, they're not in this for the free service. While it's a very important profession and a big need in the Valley, they're going to want to run a business and be able to pay off their medical debt as well. And so we need to make sure that as Medicaid has been expanded, that it's also expanded in the right spots to reimburse our docs to be able to see a larger Medicaid population. And that pilot program is starting right here in the Valley. So I'm looking forward to seeing the success of that, not only in the reimbursement of our doctors to be able to see more Medicaid patients, but actually to be able to reimburse them in a timely fashion so they're not waiting months to get reimbursed for the work that they've already done. So we are making some strides in healthcare, but obviously our biggest challenge will continue to be access. And the tax cuts. We passed the tax cuts. Our economy is responding. We went from 1.6% growth in 2016 to over 3% growth now. We're seeing it from everywhere from businesses expanding and hiring more people, the jobless rate going down, to actually people seeing bonuses in their paychecks. Hundreds of companies have offered bonuses to their employees due to the tax cuts. But better than that, people are actually seeing it in their paychecks. More take-home pay. And I think that's critical to rebounding here in the Valley as well. And to tap on to also what Adam Gray said, I just want to emphasize our partnership in the Valley. You know, he's a Democrat. That may come as a surprise to you. I'm a Republican. We work very, very closely together. And I agree with him that Anthony Cannella has been a superstar for us in making sure that some of the needs that we've had for decades are being addressed. Everything from ACE Train to working in a partnership on 132. We now have a $9 million grant, a Tiger grant on 132 that will help us from access to the Valley from the east side to the west side. We've got to get more trucks off of the freeway, but also get more goods moving from the Valley so that we can continue to create more jobs. But it's been a real partnership. This isn't something that happens on the state level or the federal level or even the local level. It happens when we all work together. And our team with the Board of Supervisors and our local councils, it has been a true partnership where the Valley has come together to work together for the Valley. ACE Train, I agree as well. I've been continuing to work with ACE Train as we continue to expand over into the Valley. I believe it does need to connect with BART. There's no reason that ACE Train should go over the Altamont and then people should have to park a car there or get in an Uber or a cab or have a bicycle to get over to BARF. If we're going to have access to the Bay Area, there's no reason we shouldn't have that interconnectivity. But we should also have H train come all the way down into the valley. It is something that gets used a lot. It provides a great deal of not only ridership, but fares that go back into the infrastructure as well. But again, it's going to continue to be a state, local, federal partnership that gets that done. So let me just spend a few minutes talking about the omnibus bill, because that's the thing that's in the news right now today. So we passed that yesterday. There were some really good things in there. You know, this is something where the House passed the 12 appropriation bills over to the Senate to watch them sit. They sat over there for months and months and months, then we passed the budget caps. Budget caps took those 12 bills and then spread them across and said what our budget priorities were. And then there was a backroom deal that was done. It took it out of the committee's hands, it took it out of the House of Representatives and the Senate's hands, and negotiated between the four leaders. Now, again, there are some good things in there. For homelessness, $8.3 million for transitional living. You know, there are a number of grants in there that are good things for our community. Mental health, a lot of mental health dollars actually focusing on 21st century cures and getting mental health dollars back into our community so that we can address homelessness as well. Something that I've been fighting for it's my number one priority, and that's making sure that we've got access to water here. Our valley dries up, our economy dries up, and it affects every sector of our community if we don't have water. So everything from recycle programs with the North Valley Regional Recycled Water Program, $4.3 million in there for that, as well as Shasta. For the first time, we're actually moving forward on Shasta. And it's no longer just studying it, but actually expanding Shasta. It is the cheapest water that we can have. It is the most accessible water to our tributaries. And it's the best way to convey water back down to the valley. So $20 million in there for that. But with all of that being said, with all of the number of things that were good in this omnibus bill, I voted no. And you elect me to be a leader. And ultimately, as I did when I was in the state Senate, you know, oftentimes you get these late night votes, 2,230-something pages that were thrown down before us, and I agree that, you know, a lot of the framework was there that we had read in the past, but if you can't read what's in the bill and know exactly what's in there, then you shouldn't be voting for it.
The tax
and
bill.
You need to know not only what's in there, but how it's specifically going to affect your community. So I will take this back to another critical vote that I remember when I was in the state Senate. So my very, very, very good friend, Dave Cox, he and I had worked on the water bond, worked very closely on it. And when it came down to it in the final vote, I didn't get a chance late at night to call back the people in my district to see, you know, is this something we were going to favor? Is it something that's good for us? All I had to do was go with a gut feeling on how is it going to impact us. We took a $7.5 billion water bond that should have been much higher if we're actually going to address real water storage. But the $7.5 billion bond should have went primarily to water storage. $2.7 billion went to water storage, to new infrastructure. That's still a big number. But the biggest issue was there was no guarantee. I want to guarantee that if 69% of the public across the state is going to support something, then the government actually does what it said it was going to do. That the money that was supposed to go to certain areas, including water infrastructure, actually goes there. And every one of our water projects that have been studied for decades now, including sites, including Shasta, including Temperance Flat, got a 0 on whether or not that they were adequate for this funding formula. So not only did the $7.5 billion not go to water storage, but the $2.7 billion that was promised to the voters, all of our water projects were a 0. So that was kind of my same thinking and philosophy when we got to the omnibus bill. A lot of things in there, a lot of good things in there, a lot of work that was done, but a big bill done with that many pages thrown onto our desks without addressing the biggest issue that we're facing right here in our community, one that should have been supported by both sides of the aisle, is addressing our dreamer population. Yesterday, Pete Aguilar and I have been working with the Hispanic Caucus on finding a real solution. Now that means border security as well. But our kids who went to school with dreamers now have been for decades working in our businesses, going to our schools. We need to have a permanent fix, and that should have been part of the agreement. The president has issued his statements on what he'd like to see, and right now, if you turn the news on, that is the focus. The Senate passed it late last night, and the president is threatening a veto right now, specifically on the streamer issue. So I might get called back tomorrow. Quite frankly, I hope that we do, because I think there's still more work that can be done on this bill. Again, there's some good things that we've negotiated in there. There's some things in there that I've worked on for well over a year to make sure they were in this bill. But ultimately, you've got an up or down vote. And I voted it down because ultimately it did not address all of the major drivers in my community, including a permanent fix for our dreamers. So let me just touch on one last subject before I take questions, and that's moving forward. So the House, the Senate, we passed, that was our last big must-pass bill. And those must-pass bills are the ones that have to get done because there's a deadline or there's some type of funding scenario that will run out. This was our last big opportunity to really force a vote on dreamers. After the president set a 6-month deadline to say March 5th, that you had to get this done. So we blew by that. Congress failed to get its job done. And now we are working to set a new deadline to address this issue. So what we have left now is we've got the FAA reauthorization, which will happen as soon as we get back. We have the WARDA bill, which is a lot of our water infrastructure. We have an infrastructure package that we want to put forward, but there's no deadline with that. And then we have the farm bill, which is a critical issue that we are very close on negotiations on. But specifically, I wanted to just touch on the infrastructure bill. I am in a leadership position on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. I want to make sure that not only do we have money that is coming to our community for ACE Train, but that ACE Train actually puts positive train control in place, as we need to put it in place across the country so that our rail system is the safest in the world. We also need to make sure that we are expanding our roads, our bridges, our ports need to be dredged and expanded. You see the Panama Canal opening up and bigger ships coming through that will bypass California if we don't address our ports. We've got to have greater goods movement. If our area, which is chief on exports, is going to continue to be a leader on exports, we've got to be able to logistically move that freight out of our community and onto those big ships. But the biggest part of this infrastructure package will be water infrastructure. In a committee, we talk a lot about user-paid projects, and some of my colleagues will say, well, what, are you just going to put a toll road up on every highway across the country? No. Every time I turn on my tap, I am paying for that water. Every time I irrigate my crop, I am paying for the water that builds that new infrastructure. We've got to put money back into our infrastructure, and we need a federal nexus to do that. I want to see an infrastructure bank like we've got set up for roads, like we've got set up for other areas. We should have one as well for water. So the new Water Act will be part of the infrastructure bill. It gives us a low interest or zero interest loan so that we can leverage federal dollars with our state bond that we will get and make sure that we've got the user-paid projects and we'll pay that back. So it is a big opportunity to solve California's water issue. And the infrastructure package is not only something I want to see that's big and bold with more revenue than it currently has today, but a fix to the trust fund where the money actually goes back into fixing our roads and then we actually fix water storage once and for all. So I have a lot I can continue to talk about, but I know there are a number of questions out there. Let me just end on this note. It is a very divisive and emotional time out there right now. You hear a lot about resistance movements and just say, vote against anything this president does. Look, I didn't take that position when I was in the state legislature, whether it was Davis or Schwarzenegger. And I'm certainly not going to take it now because I'm going to fight for the Valley. I wasn't going to demagogue President Obama, even when it was things that I didn't agree with. But I'm certainly going to work with whatever president, whatever governor, that will help me to fix things for the Valley here. Questions, comments, concerns, insults? I'll take insults too. Yes, ma'am. I don't. Jenny, I'm so surprised to see you here this morning because
why?
I see you at every single event that I go to everywhere.
Well, I think it's really important, and I'm really thankful that you came and that our Adam Gray came, and I would like to see more of our officials come. But my question is, what is your stance on the high-speed rail? You talked about ACE train, which I think is really great. There's a lot of things we need, and actually you have helped. In some ways you've helped them out, but I really would like to know what your stance on the high-speed rail.
Absolutely. So Jenny, I know that when you vote on something in Modesto City Council, that every week when you go back to that City Council meeting, people come up there and they tell you exactly what they think about what you voted on. And I guarantee that the people of Modesto say, Jenny, you gave us your word on something, you're going to stick to that. Well, I voted for California High-Speed Rail. I was a deciding vote to get it out of the Senate. And looking back at it, that is probably one of the worst votes that I ever took, only because of the trust in government issue. If it's a $9.95 billion bond that is promised to go out there to do new infrastructure with a federal and a private match, then it should do that. If it's a $33 billion project that's going to not only go from our area, linking us to San Francisco and LA, then we need to have a timeline that works for that as well. And it was also promised to voters it was going to go to San Diego and Sacramento. The only cost savings measure that California High-Speed Rail has had was telling the voters in San Diego and Sacramento, sorry, you're not getting your rail system. So now a system that is well over 10 years, by their numbers, over 10 years out of whack, and one that is quadrupled in price, it is hard to support. Now, I know that there are people out here that would like to see, they'd like to see a government-run healthcare system. I know that there's a bill in the state legislature that is focused on that would quadruple our state budget. Our budget, I don't know what the current numbers are, but I think it's about 110, 120 billion right now, and that would take it to 400 and something billion. California High-Speed Rail, the same thing. If it is a priority for the governor, if he's going to commit to his promise back to the taxpayers, where's his extra 70, 80 billion dollars? There is no plan. There is no, it's that whole theory of, well, let's just build part of it in Fresno. And let's build some high rises, let's tear down some buildings, let's close down some businesses, and we'll start building it. And we run out of money, someday some more money will come. That's not any way I'd run my business. I know that's not the way you'd run the city. The voters would have a hard time with that in Modesto. So I believe not only in making sure that that these projects are fiscally sound, but I believe the government needs to do what it says it was going to do, whether I like it or not. There have been some bond measures that have been passed that I didn't like, but the frustrating part was when they were passed and then the money's stolen. We saw that with the tobacco tax recently. That was supposed to go back to fund our local doctors, and instead that money got diverted. Government has to start doing what it says it was going to do. If you're going to go out to the ballot and make a promise to voters, then you got to fulfill that promise. That's a long way of saying I'm very frustrated with California High-Speed Rail. Oh no, I'll get to you, ladies. I think everybody deserves an opportunity. Yeah, let's go here first, and then we'll go to these two ladies here. You don't want to ask a question? I give you guys a chance every time. Yeah.
Dave Hosmer from Series. You've ignored the gun violence issue in your presentation. I'm wondering how important it is to you and what is it going to take. The murder of 17 high school kids, the murder of 58 concert goers. What is it going to take for you and your co-workers to actually make a significant progress on doing something about these weapons of war that are in our society?
What is it going to take? What do you think should be done?
I think that the semi-automatic rifles should be banned, the sale, the ammunition form, the high-capacity magazines, that there should be universal background checks for everyone who's buying it. There should be a minimum 21, at least 21-year age limit on that. That's what I think. But the NRA has been in charge of this policy for 30 years. 1 million people have died from gun violence in this country, and you have done nothing.
Okay, that's your opinion. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I guess you would support the California law then. California has had a ban on automatic weapons, even on assault weapons, but all that actually means on assault weapons in California is you take the pistol grip off. Semi-automatics, that's every shotgun that every duck hunter uses. That's every hunter that takes any rifle out is semi-automatic. That's the 9mm that I have at home, and mine is a semi-automatic. My wife's gun is a semi-automatic. Dianne Feinstein's gun is a semi-automatic. So there are a number of Republicans and Democrats that all use semi-automatic weapons. I believe that not only should we be safe in using them, but I do think that there ought to be a rule of law, that we address this from a federal standpoint, which was in the omnibus bill, to have a NICS system that actually works, that coordinates all agencies, local, federal, state, but also includes military and mental health. You take a look at some of these shootings, whether it was the Navy Yard or Sandy Hook or recently in Texas, mental health issues that should have been caught by other agencies when they had them flagged. So having a NICS system that works will catch a lot of these. But I can see you and I will have a disagreement. You probably want to take the California law much, much further. And I would say, you know what? Go lobby the governor. Go lobby Sacramento to make California's laws even that much stricter. But you and I will have a difference of opinion when it comes to semi-automatic weapons. I know, and I understand that you want to hold Republicans accountable, but not Democrats that run a state like this that has some of the toughest gun control laws in the country. Okay, next question.
I didn't hear Republican in his question.
Right.
You
just make everything political.
Yeah, you
know.
do.
I mean, just talk about the issues.
It's not partisan. It's people dying.
Talk about the issues. No politics.
One more question.
Oh, I mentioned the governor. You can lobby the governor.
We can lobby you too.
Yes, there is a bipartisan effort being made in Congress to repeal the Dickey Amendment, which currently blocks the CDC from doing research on gun violence and its effect on public health. Will you support that repeal?
It is a new piece of legislation. I will, if you'll give me your information, I will make sure I follow back up with you. But as I do with any bill, I hope you would expect me to read it, understand it, and be able to have a thoughtful debate with you on it. Let me get right back to you on it. Give us your information.
It's not new.
Oh, I understand, but...
It's been signed by Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, I get it. The omnibus wasn't new either, but it still had 2,200 something pages, and I'd like to take a look at everything that's in it.
Well,
But let me get back to you.
Repealed.
But let me get back to you. Give me your name and address. Give me your phone number. I'm happy to call you back.
No, I just want to know, yes or no, do you believe in the repeal?
He doesn't even know what that is. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know what that is.
You don't know what the Dickey Amendment is?
He needs to go back to Washington.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next time, Congressman.
When will you hold your next town hall?
Do your homework.
We really appreciate the excitement that you bring to our event this morning. But in order for us to continue with our event this morning,
know the issues next time, sir. Know the issues.
And not
read up on
just
the issues.
your particular concerns with Congressman Denham. We are here to hear from all of our elected officials across the spectrum. So this wasn't a debate. This was pancakes and politics. So yes, politics are divisive in our country right now, but we ask that you respect and have a nice political decorum.
Let him respect us for a change.
He is here on our behalf of this entire country.
He's not respectful.
And you are not being respected, so we're going to ask you to
He's not
please.
respectful.
You had your time, you've asked your questions.
I didn't
Now we're
ask a
gonna move on to
question.
the rest of our program, because we have to respect everyone in this room's time. So I appreciate that, and with that, I do want to mention that Senator Cannella had a conflict this morning, was not able to make it. We're sorry that he was not able to be here, but representatives from his office, Brenda was here. Brenda, so if you have any questions for Senator Cannella, find Brenda and she can help you with that. So next in our program, we're moving down the political spectrum into our local county. I'd like to introduce Supervisor Jim DiMartini.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here today. I don't know how I'm going to follow up on what just happened, but it's hard to believe it's been a year since I've been here to just go over the issues with the county. Stanislaus County's financial position right now is it's strong and healthy, is how I call it. Not that we don't have our issues there, but things are about as good as what they've been in many years. Stanislaus County, unlike most of the counties in California, has no general fund debt. None. And we have 186 million in reserves. That doesn't mean we're just going to start throwing money at everything, but it's good to have some healthy reserves. It's about 15% of our budget, by the way, 186 million, just in case of the next downturn, which will come someday. So we're saving up for that. Plus, we've paid off all our debt. And things are better than what they have been. I don't think the Board of Supervisors can take all the credit for that, but property values are up. Violent crime is down, unemployment is down also, and the wages are higher than they've been the last few years, so things have improved. And the county board is responsible for 26 different departments. And we provide a variety of services for the residents of this county. And our objective is to have efficient delivery of public services and looking for ways of doing things better all the time. So, and I think we're a fairly efficient operation. Government is kind of a big boat, and when you have to make a policy change, it takes a little while to do it. But I think things are moving in the right direction, and we have very efficient delivery of services. We have actually less employees now working for Stanislaus County than we had 10 years ago. we just do things a little bit better. We promote economic development. One of our big projects right now that we're just starting to get off the ground is the development of the Crow's Landing Air Base, which we think will be really good for the area, providing some good paying jobs. Our environmental impact report is out for public comment now. It's been delayed 45 days, but if you want to look at that document, we can get it to you. It's online. You make some comments. We are developing a 1,500 acre parcel that used to be part of the federal government Naval Air Station. And we plan on putting in a business park there to create jobs and economic development for the people who live in this area. Since so many of them have to travel out of the county for work, we want to try and keep these jobs here to avoid that commute. And we have the land, and we will put in the infrastructure. The county is committed to putting in $30 million just to get the project off the ground. There'll be more on that next year. When I'm back here, I'll let you know how our progress has been made. But we do have a plan, a very specific plan too. It's not a high-level plan. We're down into the weeds on this. We know what we want to do. And so that report has been released and it's open for public comment now. One of the things that the board has done besides, the supporting the economic development is support of agriculture. I'm a farmer myself, so it's very sensitive to that. The agriculture is our #1 industry in this county. About 1/3 of our workforce, directly or indirectly, is involved in agriculture. It's not just the farmers like myself, but it's all the equipment manufacturers, repairers, chemicals, fertilizer, all the things that go into the inputs into this industry. It is, as I say, our biggest industry. It's $3.3 billion industry. It employs a lot of people, about 1/3 of our workforce, as I said. And we grow about 200 different commodities here. So that's unique in the world. Most places just grow a handful of crops. But we have the climate, and we have the water and the soil that we can do that. So we're very protective of that, and we do have policies in place that protect agricultural land and mitigate the loss of the agricultural land from residential housing. And because of the support of the people of this county, we have passed Measure L, which is a sales tax increase to improve road infrastructure. We have fallen behind through the years because there just hasn't been enough money to keep the roads up or make improvements, intersection improvements, or that have been needed for the increase in the population. That has now changed, And the county and the cities, who are partners in Measure L, are going ahead with infrastructure projects to improve traffic flow. The county is working on the central corridor right now. Was the 132 bypass. We have the North County corridor, a significant amount of that done already, and we are developing plans for the South County corridor to connect Highway 99 in the Turlock area to Highway 5 going through Patterson. So they have a better connection to move freight and goods around. So this is what Measure L will do to you. We've passed about 70% or so of the vote, which is really quite good for a tax increase to do that. But I was on a member of StanCog when we put this plan together, and we specifically said what you were going to get out of this, where the money was going to go, how much was going to go to the cities, how much would go to signalization, to road repair, and to new highways. So I do appreciate everybody's support in that. We're not going to let you down on that. We're going to make these improvements as we promised, and we are doing that at this time. We also had passed a Measure S, which was the extension of the sales tax for our libraries. And our libraries are very good in this county. We want to keep them that way. And 1/8% sales tax, it goes a long ways into library improvement and modernization. And we're going to expand the library in Turlock, and we're going to put in an entirely new library in Empire with this money, and modernize the system and be able to buy books and supplies and do literacy programs, especially for children. So this is really a good thing, and it's well funded. It's the tax goes for 12 years, and it is going to be money well spent. So we are doing things to improve the area there. We're maintaining our parks better. We have spent substantial amount of money through state grants to expand our jails, or really modernize our jails. We have closed the downtown jail now, which was not very adequate. And we have just finished completion of a $44 million reentry and enhancement to alternatives. And this is a new program, first in the state, that will take prisoners getting ready to be released and actually get them ready to go back into society. They give them some job training and some support. The objective of this, of course, is to reduce recidivism. And we don't want to have the revolving door where you serve your sentence and you go out and recommit and you're back in jail again. This program is to give these people some support to get out into society. And for those that who want to, I think this program is going to work well for them. The Sheriff's Department is been very cooperative on this. We have got a plan which I think was going to work very well. We're working with the Probation Department also. So the system that we had before just really wasn't working. I've been with the sheriff before that in the jail, and I can remember him with some inmates there. They were about 30 years old and they were learning how to read. And they had been in and out of jail probably most of their lives, and the sheriff had asked them some questions of, how many of you dropped out of school? That was all of them. How many of you had substance abuse issues? It was all of them. How many of them lived in a single-parent home as they were growing up? It was all of them again. And what really struck me was the last question he'd asked these people. He says, how many of you have children? Well, it was all of them again. So there they were in jail and not raising their children. It was just a revolving door, and we have to do something to change the system, to see that parents are raising their children, and that the people that have committed crimes going to learn their lesson and get some job training and go back to society to be productive members of it, rather than be in jail and not taking care of their own children. So that is changing, and it's very positive here. And as I say, it's the first program in the state that is going to do this. We have, I know what has come up before, is the homeless issue. then the county has been working very actively on this, using our focus on prevention strategy. It's a community-wide effort, taking different segments of society to come up with a solution to the homeless program problems. And I can tell you that the drug problem is kind of the driving force of this. Yesterday I was out all day with the probation department. We went through checks through Ceres, Newman, and Patterson, which is my area. And for the people that we visited there, checking up on them, and several of them have warrants and had to be taken off to jail again. I think the driving force is drug addiction and gang membership. And this has just really got to change. And the focus on prevention is trying to look at solving this problem rather than just treating the symptoms of it. And it has got to be more than just the government itself that's going to solve this program. It's got to be all segments of the society. It's got to be business. It's got to be the faith-based groups. It just has to be everybody involved in this. And we have put together a coalition that is doing that. They're trying to get the people off the streets and get them drug treatment, job training, housing. And we expect results from this. We're just not going to take money and just throw it at this and not expect any results. Our homeless has increased 15% just in the last year. So this is a bad trend, and we just got to get a hold of this and get these people the treatment that they need. We're not going to save everybody. It's not realistic to think that. Some people just want to live out in the street and be bums, but there are some of them that just need some help to get out of the lifestyle that they're in. And I think the drug addiction and dealing with mental illness and job training is the way to do it. And so I think that we're going to be successful on this. We're certainly putting in a lot of effort. And we have a plan. We're just not just throwing money at this. The worst thing government can do with a problem like this is just throw money at it and not expect any results. And we are results driven. We expect to get some bang for the buck and get the people off the street. The ones that really want to get off of the street and get back into the workforce and deal with their mental illness or get off of the drugs that have caused their problems there, those are the ones that we can help. And that's what we do. The Stewardship Council is the one that is the coalition. So it's not an easy thing, because I was trying to strengthen families is the issue that we have today. Better parenting, I think, would go a long ways in preventing problems of gangs, drug addiction, and homelessness in the future. And strengthening the institutions that we have in this country of family, faith, education, and work should be the foundation of what we're doing. And not just tossing money at it and saying, oh, well, that's all we're going to do is we're just going to feed them in the parks and just, give them money. We want to get them back into the workforce and get them the help that they need. And the last issue I have that's come up before, I went through the TID was here. I certainly like the Turlock Irrigation District. That's the district I'm in, to protect our water rights. And I think that the biggest challenge that Stanislaus County has in this region is the Water Resources Control Board trying to take the water that we have from the water rights that go back to the 1880s. The water from the Don Pedro, Exchequer, and Maloney's dams is especially in danger now, where we have an unelected board coming up with its own rules and regulations and saying, no, we're going to take 40 to 60% of your water, just run it down the river, and this is going to help the salmon. It is not going to help the salmon, and this is nothing more than a water grab that's going to cost all of us a lot of money. It's going to just wreck the agriculture, jobs, and drop property values. The salmon population, the smolt that go down the river, about 97% of them are eaten by the bass before they ever get to the ocean. So if the Water Resources Control Board really wanted to do something about the salmon, to increase those numbers, we have to do something first about the predation that's taken 97% of the salmon out as they go down the river. You know, and what was brought up was Proposition 1. I think our Assemblyman brought that up. This was the water bond that we had. And this one, I voted for this thing too, but I'm kind of questioning whether or not I should have supported it. $7 billion for this project. Nothing has been built. We have a different water board from the Water Control Board, and they said that all these projects that have been in the development for years, like Temperance Flat, Shasta Dam, Sites Reservoir, they don't meet the criteria for the water. But these are good water projects. And California has not built a reservoir since the Maloney's Dam was put in 30 years ago. And at that time, our population was about 20 million people. Today, it's almost 40 million. And the water storage in California has only went up by 1%. So that has to change. And the people of this state voted for this bond to create more water storage. These are generally off-site reservoirs, and they have to be built. The water infrastructure in this state has just fallen far behind. It is just time to do what the voters wanted and build these reservoirs to try and reverse this trend of just always in a regulatory drought. So between that and protecting the water rights in this area, this is what your Board of Supervisors is committed to. We have great support by the irrigation districts in this area, most notably the Turlock and Modesto irrigation districts, Oak Hill irrigation districts, and all the ones on the west side who realize the importance of this issue. And this really is a big issue. You won't really realize it unless they're successful and we don't have water anymore and you've got thousands of acres of ground go out of production, and the sales of farm equipment and fertilizer and all the jobs that go into growing the crops and processing these crops, like peaches, where the canneries shut down because they're just sitting the product to process. And this will hit home. So we have to be diligent about this and stand up to these people. They are, I say, unelected board, and we really have to rein them in. We hate to have to go to court every time, but we have the water. We have the water rights to go back, a long ways, and somebody else wants the water, so we have to stand up for the water that we actually have a right to, and protect those rights. Otherwise, the impact upon our economy is going to be devastating. That's all.